hit go live. Where's that button? Will you mute that computer? Where are you? All right, we're rolling.
Wearing the leg hats.
We are the misbehaviors. We are your sinners and saviors. We the free. We are your concentration. We are your consternation. We the free. Yeah, yeah. We the free. And we the free. Don't tell me that you see the way we see. We are your outcast babies. We are your don't knows and maybes. We are your nightmares. We are your double dares. We are what makes you scream. We the free. Yeah, yeah. And we the free. And we the free. Don't tell me that you speak the way we speak. We are your trepidation. We range from nation to nation. We are the changing guard. We are the lightning rod. We are love as it's meant to be. And we the free. And we the free. Don't tell me that you see the way we see. We the free. And we the free. We are the free. We are the free. We are the free.
Welcome to the Muddied Waters of Freedom with your hosts, Matt Wright and Mohammed Shaker.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Vanguard. For Mohammed throwing up the thumbs up shaker, I am Matt Wright, and together we are traversing the muddied waters of freedom. What's going on, buddy?
Hey man, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I ate more food than a human should be allowed to consume in one sitting, but I still didn't consume the most sitting at my table, which was truly, truly amazing. So big props to our new friend TJ for possibly dying later. Seriously, we ate so much food. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think I posted it to my Facebook. We got these smothered pork chops with macaroni and cheese, collard greens, cabbage, and cornbread. And TJ ate all of it. It was insane. I couldn't believe it.
It's badass.
Yeah, it was so good.
That's how the army does it, man. They do things right.
Excuse me. That was part of the cabbage.
I was gonna say, is that you or me?
That was
Holy
me,
moly!
yeah.
We apologize to all our listeners.
Wow, that came out of nowhere. Anyway, we have a guest on today's show. Would you care to introduce today's guest?
Yeah, I'm just gonna say his name and let him introduce himself.
That sounds good.
Well, I'm gonna say a little bit more.
So you lied.
I've got a good friend of mine, James Reilly, coming on. James Reilly did a few years in the United States Navy, working in the ops, whatever that means. And met him at the Mises University last year in Auburn, Alabama, during the 1-week Mises University event. It was pretty fun. He's the guy that introduced me to Scott Horton, and he got me into historical European martial arts, which he can tell us a little bit about that too if he wants to. So James, please introduce yourself to our fans.
Hey, guys, it's good to be here with you.
It's great to have you
Good
on.
to have
We
you on,
definitely
man.
appreciate you taking the time to come out.
Yeah. So, Mohammed and I met at Mises U. We kind of connected pretty quickly because we were both military, both former military at the time. Now, I got to ask, you were flirting with looking back to the military. Is that right, Mohammed? Are you over that, or are you still kind of keeping that in your back pocket? What's going on with that?
Oh, it's in my back pocket.
In a different pair of pants.
Yeah. A lot of people, I mean, maybe I think you remember the thing that happened with me, and I talked about it on the show 3 months ago when I was Baker acted. So I don't know how that's going to affect me trying to go back in. I never talked to any recruiters since then. Some of my military friends say that it would hinder it, and some say it would not at all. So I just put it in my back pocket, and I was like, not worth looking at it right now.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I spent a long time in the military, and really just can't even imagine thinking about going back in. But then again, I spent like 10 years active.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
jeez.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It was really rough, man. It was pretty, so, especially my first tour, I did 5 years on a ship. 4 of those 5 years, I was actually out at sea. So if you could imagine that.
Yeah.
Lived on the boat, waking up to ocean.
Yeah. Sounds nice. You got waterfront.
It's waterfront property everywhere you go.
Yeah. Also, James happens to be one of the very few people that has ever seen me drunk.
Yeah,
I hear that is quite the spectacle anytime that he gets drunk.
Well, here's what I can tell you is that I was also inebriated.
Yeah.
That actually makes sense.
I don't have much recollection of how it looked, but yeah, well, how was it good? Yeah, that was actually, I think we met at the bar, didn't we?
No. What?
Yeah, no, we.
No. We met at karaoke with Bob Murphy.
Well, that was the bar.
Yeah, okay,
bar.
so I guess that does count as a bar. I consider that just karaoke.
I was like, what place is doing karaoke that doesn't have alcohol?
Well, I consider the alcohol in the bar part of karaoke, so I just say karaoke.
Oh, yeah. Well, no.
Because then we left and went to another bar.
Yeah, we went to another bar. Yeah, we went to a few bars that night. Mises U, it's a party. It's one big party.
Well, yeah, and downtown was busy that day.
Yeah,
Because everybody was out, which was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Lots of Alabama girls everywhere.
Well, Alabama girls are like the third best looking girls in the country.
Yep. That's after Tennessee and Texas, probably.
Yep, that's it. That is the order.
And you're from Virginia, right?
I am from Virginia. Oh, him?
I think he is too.
Oh.
No, I'm not. I'm from New York City.
Oh, my bad.
Oh.
You're in New
Why
York
is
City
he
right
on
now?
the show?
You're in New York City right now?
No. I live in Wisconsin.
Okay. I don't know why Virginia came up. I don't know. I never. Wow. I must be confusing you for somebody else. Did we have the wrong guest?
Do we have the
come on?
wrong guest on? I didn't book this one. I don't know.
Oh man, but no, it's good having you on, man. We can go right into the
Yeah,
show.
I guess we can go right into it.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
we made that one real awkward there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all you, man. That's all you. All right, so we went over some of our favorite topics that we're going to be talking about today, and let's talk about the ones that you really wanted to talk about in whatever order you would like to, because there's the JFK files, and then there's Walter Jones's bill.
So which one would you prefer to start out with? Because I'm book smart on both.
Well, so I think the more important one, so I'm kind of a JFK nut.
Oh God.
That's basically what I do all day some days. But that's not as pressing as the Jones bill.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we should probably bring that up and let anyone who's listening know that their activism is required. Get on the phone with your congressman. House Concurrent Resolution 81 is what Walter Jones is sponsoring with a few Democrats. Actually, he's got 30 co-sponsors, including Thomas Massey,
Amash.
who's consistent on that stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
End the war in Yemen. So some people may or may not know that we've been engaging in a war with Yemen for the last since 2015. So
Yeah.
going on 2 years.
Yeah.
Where I guess Saudi Arabia decided that. Well, no, it started with the Houthis, didn't it?
Yes.
So the Houthis took control of Sana'a and became the de facto government for the country.
That was a military coup, right? Are we talking about the same thing? There was a very popular general that.
No. Well, so kind of.
Yeah.
He was deposed. The popular general that you're talking about was deposed. His name isn't coming to me right now, but he was deposed, and then this is when Hillary Clinton and her State Department had the election of the new government. It was Hadi's new government. He was the only one on the ballot, so they had a popular election with one name on the ballot that was put on there by Hillary Clinton.
That seems fair.
Yeah. So the former leader of the country, who was a military general, basically teamed up with a group of revolutionaries to the north that they're different. They're Shia. They're similar. They're more similar to Sunnis than they are to like the Shia in Iran.
Mm-hmm.
But they together they took over the government, and now we've got Saudi Arabia basically bombing them ever since. And then the U.S. is part in that.
Yeah.
That we've been refueling their planes and lending logistical assistance and even picking targets and everything. So.
Yeah, back in '65, actually, Egypt got involved in Yemen as well, and that didn't go pretty well for Egypt either. But that was a different time for a different reason. It was the Cold War and pan-Arab, socialism thing was going on. But yeah, Yemen is, it seems to have always been dealing with stuff like this, and Saudi Arabia will do. It seems like Saudi Arabia will do whatever it can to keep itself the most powerful player in that part of, the Arabian Peninsula anyways. Anything that's not going well around them that they find that's going to be to the best of their interests, which is normal for any country's government, in my opinion. Any government will try to do what's in their best self-interests as a government and for whatever they think may be for their country. They're going to go ahead and do, because Saudi Arabia also got involved in, is it Bahrain? I think it's Bahrain.
Qatar.
No, not Qatar.
Well,
Bahrain.
They're constantly getting involved with Bahrain.
Yeah, because Bahrain is predominantly Shiite majority citizens, but the ruling elites, I guess, and the families and the royalties are all Sunni, which is a really weird thing to have. And yeah, because of the problems with them and Iran, and that brings in Islamic issues of Sunni versus Shiites. they want to make sure that the Sunnis stay on top of that in Bahrain. It's really silly.
Well,
Wait.
I mean, it's silly
Uh-huh.
to talk about. It's probably not silly for like oppressed peoples and
Of course. No.
or-
It's
yeah,
silly
yeah,
from
that
their
are-
end. Yeah.
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 Um,
So what is this
it's
bill
fun.
aiming to do?
Well, so they're invoking the war powers, which a lot of people get the war powers wrong. A lot of people think that the War Powers Act is basically meant to facilitate United States involvement in conflicts overseas, when it's actually the exact opposite. The War Powers Act is meant to inhibit the president from just going out and bombing whoever he wants to bomb. He only has a limited amount of time that he can engage in this conflict.
Yeah.
Basically, the idea is he can start acting, and then the goal is to get Congress into session so that they can vote on whether or not,
Yes.
immediately. Of course, that's not the way that we use the War Powers Act today. We we just use it as a blank check to go do whatever we want around the world. So Jones'
Yes.
bill is designed to invoke the War Powers Act and stop the unconstitutional war, aiding the Saudi Arabian war against.
Yeah,
the
no,
Yemen people.
would that be? See, I don't remember the word I'm looking for. It's a judicial word. That is, when a court decides on something, that is how every other court usually starts deciding things by. Do you know what I'm talking about? Precedent? Is that what it is? Legal
Yes.
precedent?
Yeah, that's-
Yeah, so if this legislation goes in, if he invokes the war power, do you think would that affect all the other wars that are going on right now? So would that in turn then affect Afghanistan?
No. So the justification for the war in Afghanistan is based on a prior authorization. So like a legitimate authorization. There's no, to my knowledge, there's no authorization that Congress signed for our involvement in the Yemeni war.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Ron Paul
so-
didn't Ron Paul vote for Afghanistan, the Afghan war?
He did, and
He
did.
it was actually the authorization of the use of military force, and it was supposedly to target the Al Qaeda and people who aided and abetted Al Qaeda, but they took that to mean government and everyone,
Yes.
military else, in Afghanistan. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it would. I think it would probably be beneficial, in the longer term. Like aside from just stopping the U.S. involvement in Yemen, which would be enough for me. But I think in the long run, people could look at it and say, no, this is the way that the government is supposed to function.
No, it makes sense. What about North Korea?
Oh, well, I mean, who knows? There's nothing, aside from sanctions, we haven't, the government hasn't given free rein to the executive branch to use military force against North Korea. Hopefully they never do, but I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with you on
Right.
that. How did your has your military service in any way affected how you think about these issues, specifically like war?
Oh man, so so when I joined the military, I had already been very, very firmly anti U.S. involvement in foreign conflicts, anti-war, really.
Yeah.
But I was also 20 years old, and I had 2 kids and a pregnant wife, and no money. So I joined the military for that reason. So has it impact? I think it's impacted my grasp of the geopolitics. But as far as my convictions, I don't think it has so much.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. By the way, for our listeners, Walter Block is an economist that is a senior fellow with the Mises Institute. So Walter and I, and you know Walter obviously, Walter and I had a pretty cool conversation, a year and a few months ago, when we were both there, about like whether it was okay to have these anarchist philosophies and still serve anyways, or to be an anarchist or anarcho-capitalist or a libertarian sort of and take government benefits. And basically what he was saying is it's okay, because also I was a defense contractor for a bit, and he basically boiled it down to it's better that a libertarian or an anarchist do some of these jobs, because first of all, the money they get is going to be money that they can use to further our ideologies and philosophies and our families and communities, better than like a statist would be able to. Vice versa with let's say a conservative or liberal doing these jobs, and they might take this money and put it towards more statist type policies and politicians. And the other thing is, libertarian would use his philosophy to pursue his job in the most humanitarian way that he can, probably. And I agreed with him on that. I needed to clear my mind on that. And that's actually why, to answer your question, why I was thinking about also going back in, because I was like, okay, well, if I go back in, I'd be taking the job pretty damn seriously, and I wouldn't be trying to go in to murder anybody. Like, yeah, I'd be doing my job, but I'd be trying to murder a lot less people, maybe.
Right. I can see that.
Yeah. Well, it's also Walter Block that said it, so
right.
He's like king of the ANCAPs right now.
Right.
But yeah, it was a pretty interesting conversation with him. But let's move on to JFK, because this is going to be pretty interesting, because I don't know anything about. I personally don't care much about the whole JFK thing.
The only thing I care about on the JFK thing is that, one, I don't think that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. I don't. I think the CIA covered something up, and the fact that the government did that, that's what I care about. Which is why. I was going to say.
I think it probably.
Sorry,
it would probably be worth mentioning why this is even a topic right now, right?
Okay.
So.
Well, it was 55 years ago. I can't do math in my head right now. 45 years ago. 55 years ago. 55 years ago. I'm because I know how old I am. 55 years. I can do that math. 55 years ago, roughly, was when JFK was assassinated, and they kept extending. They kept it was supposed to be, all of the files on it were supposed to be declassified, but they kept extending it, and Trump did not extend the classification on it, and they were all supposed to be dropped on the 26th. Today's the 28th, yeah, on the 26th. So they released 2,800 or 6,400 of the documents, and I know the rest are supposed to be released in the next 6 months.
I think it's 2,800. That's the number I remember.
Yeah. So it's funny. There's been a lot of lying and misleading with regards to what actually happened in terms of the drop. So the final day was the 26th, I think, and they up until that, so Trump even tweeted the day prior and during the day of the 26th, like, yeah, I'm going to release all these documents. It's going to be really interesting to see. And I think most people in the research community were skeptical that it was going to happen, but as the clock kept ticking, people were kind of maybe getting excited, even a little bit, like maybe this is actually going to happen.
Right.
Of course, it didn't. It didn't happen. The important files were never released. The 2,800 pages, or 2,800 documents, rather. That's different than pages.
Yes.
Some documents, multiple pages.
Multiple pages. Right.
But the 2,800 documents that were released had already been released. Most of them had already been released, but fully redacted. So they, or not fully redacted, but partially redacted. So they released those pages without the redactions, and they only released 52 pages that they hadn't released before. In any. Yeah. So, and then of course we're looking. I said 52 pages, 52 documents. I got to stop.
But still, 52 out of 2,800 isn't. I would not be good.
Right.
I would not be happy on that return. If I'd been waiting, 20 years for new documents to come out, and I'm like, yes, well, okay, we're going to get 2,800. Read it.
And the thing too is, they're the important documents, right? So everything that's been released up until now, we're talking millions and millions and millions of pages, have been released over the course of the last 20 years, and we're like waiting on this last batch of documents, and they are the important ones. So anyone who knows about the case, who's like really into it, knows that names that constantly come up: David Atlee Phillips, William Harvey, George Joanides, who else? E. Howard Hunt. Like all these names that have been coming up from the very beginning, with regards to possible connections to Oswald or possible connections to the assassination. And these are the documents that are being withheld, and virtually none of those documents were released. And so, it's just it's another sleight of hand. I guess he bought himself 6 months, but I remain skeptical. I mean, after 55 years, if there's still, and then they did it on the grounds of national security, which is which is like, all right, buddy, come on.
Right. Yeah. What national security can that have at this point?
Yeah.
That makes.
Well, that people said the same thing about the I forget her name. Transgendered soldier, female.
Oh, Chelsea Manning.
Yeah, people. I'd seen people complain about the same thing, like, oh well, the files and the videos that Chelsea put out were a detriment to our national security. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me that him putting out videos that the people there saw in person was somehow going to make it any more dangerous? Because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, now Americans know what happened in some of these places and some of these acts. But, the Iraqi people, no, they saw that. They don't need any videos, or they don't need anything to be released to know what happened, to be mad about us being there to go out and bomb American soldiers, driving a convoy on the road. They were going to do that anyways because they seen it. But yeah, the whole national security thing is just a blanket term for anything that's like, hey, we might be. It's a silly term to just say, hey, we might be bombed if we talk about this or release it or whatever.
Or we're going to be viewed as, we did something wrong. Mm-hmm. So we don't want people to think that. So we're just going to say it's a matter of that. Yeah. That's
what the national security concern is. They're going to release these documents, and the rest of the country's going to be like, what the fuck? Why did a government kill the president? And then, it could be violent overthrow. That's the national security they're talking about.
Yes, exactly. It's the status security that they're talking about.
Yeah.
That bingo, yeah.
For my backwards really plug, it's the Stathiest security that they're worried about.
Yep.
Yeah, Stathia, that's a new new single drop by
Backwards.
Backwards, huh?
Yeah. Great video.
Yeah.
Great video.
I haven't gotten a chance to sit down and watch the video yet.
The video is really good.
Really good.
The video is really good. Eric and Alex and them did a great job on that video. The guy curling up at the end with the FDR picture. That was so great. That was so good. But yes.
What were you about to say?
Before we got onto backwards there for a quick second.
No. Well, so I'm just so the whole JFK thing, man. What I do appreciate is that it's got people talking about it right now. This document drop was. We did learn a few bits and pieces of information, stuff that we kind of already knew. People in the research community already knew it, but now the mainstream media's kind of spent a 24-hour news cycle looking at it and making it part of the national conversation, even if for a moment. But there's definitely some information there, or rather, there's some information that's already come out that it really makes it an open and shut case, with regards to the CIA's involvement, at least involvement. Like we don't, and when I say CIA, I don't mean as an organization, and I don't even necessarily mean participated in the assassination, even though I probably believe that. But as far as the information that we already have, we know that the CIA was involved. We know that they knew who Oswald was. We know that they were tracking him for months, for years actually. We know that they were paying very close attention to him in the months leading up to the assassination. And then there's a I think probably my favorite story of the whole assassination is this the story of Dan Hardaway and Eddie Lopez. Do you know anything about these guys?
The names sound familiar to me.
So all right, so
that was Dan Harmon.
Dan Hardaway.
Dan Hardaway. I was like Dan Harmon. Yeah, he made Rick and Morty.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, I know him.
So Dan Hardaway and Eddie Lopez were some college, like grad students or something, and they were so in the end of the 70s, you had the church committee, and then that led up to the House Select Committee on Assassinations, because let's face it, everyone in the government at the time knew that there was a bunch of cover-ups going on. And so they put together this committee that was supposed to really figure out the truth about what happened during the assassination. So one of the lead prosecutors, who was brought in about halfway through, his name was, or rather, I think the lead prosecutor of the whole thing, Blakey, I can't remember his first name, but he brought in some of his grad students to help do the research. And these grad students were given like almost a year-long access to all of the CIA's documents. And for the first part of that, they were getting whatever they wanted. And they would just go in, they were like, hey, we want to take a look at this, we want to take a look at that. So they're compiling all these documents and they're coming up with this report. And then all of a sudden, they get this new guy brought in, right? His name is George Joanides. And he was recruited to be the liaison for these two grad students, right? To the CIA's liaison. They kicked him out of the CIA's office in Langley. They put him in they basically shut down their entire operation, made it so that it was weeks before they got any of the files that they wanted, and just basically made it impossible for them to do their job. And all of this was like after this guy George Joanides came in as the liaison to facilitate, right? And the reason they took this guy out of retirement and brought him back was because he was in the CIA during the Kennedy years, and so he was supposedly knowledgeable. Well, really, what looks like what happened was people at the CIA realized that Dan Hardaway and Eddie Lopez were getting close, and they brought this guy George Joanides back in to stonewall them, right? Because he knew what they were going to find, right? So 20 years goes by, and there's a guy named Jefferson Morley who starts looking at the new files that were released after the Assassination Records Review Board. That was in the 90s. Basically, he's looking at these files, and he realizes that George Joanides was involved with some of the people that were involved with Oswald. And he basically tracks down Eddie Lopez and Dan Hardaway, and he's like, hey, did you guys know that your liaison was basically one of the prime suspects, or at least would have been a prime suspect if you had known what his involvement was? And they were like, no, we asked him if he had any involvement, and they said no, right? So the new documents,
the stringent interview. Did you have any involvement with this? No. Okay, come on.
Well, so there's new documents that were released, right? That the CIA actually brought him back on the payroll to conduct operations against people on U.S. soil, right? So he was performing the function.
Which they're not supposed to do that.
Not only are they not supposed to conduct operations on U.S. soil, but he was conducting operations against the people who were given the task of investigating the CIA.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable, man. And so all of his files still haven't been released. I could talk about this forever, but bottom line is, uh, it's a mess, and you know, it's just the government covering it up.
So,
So-
why?
Why?
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm super not a conspiracy theorist person any longer. I used to be. Not that being a conspiracy theorist or somebody that gets involved in that is necessarily a bad thing, because you're not on the level that really pisses me off. People talking about chemtrails and weather control.
The moon landing
Yeah,
was fake.
yeah.
and
Trump is
horrible.
sending hurricanes into minority areas, like not that sort of conspiracy theories. But what was the end goal of this whole thing? I mean, why couldn't it have just been some crazy guy with another crazy guy or some commies?
Right. I mean, so to be honest, probably the best work that's been done on the whole JFK case in the last 20 years has been done by researchers into not the assassination itself, but into the foreign policy of JFK prior to that, right? So JFK, the story goes that JFK was a Cold Warrior and that he was actively involved in the assassination plots against, the Castro and
Yes.
basically all of this covert operations, and that he was very supportive of the war in Vietnam, and that Lyndon Johnson, after he took over office, only did what Kennedy was already going to do, which was continue supporting the troops in Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out that none of that is true. JFK was absolutely going to get us out of Vietnam, and this is on the record. None of this is even debatable anymore.
You said he was?
He was going to get us out of Vietnam.
Didn't he
already
put us there?
No, man, we were in Vietnam since the 50s.
Well,
Really, since the if you want to, since the 40s.
yes, we were, but not on the level that it was at 65.
No, but it was 63 was when JFK. We only had advisors in there in 63 when JFK was assassinated.
Yeah.
And he had already signed a plan he already approved a plan to withdraw all of the troops that we had there by 65.
Uh-huh.
And that was in 1960. I believe it was the end of 1963, like a couple months before he got assassinated.
Okay, but that's just one country that he was planning to get us out of. He still got involved in other stuff.
Oh no, man! I mean, so he was good on. He put the kibosh on all of the operations that we were conducting against Castro. He started opening lines of communication with Khrushchev. Really,
Yes.
a lot of people think that it was the Cuban Missile Crisis that really changed his mind on the way that the U.S. interacted in terms of foreign policy, because he was so close. The Khrushchev and Kennedy basically like put the all stop on nuclear holocaust, right? And so a lot of people believed that, especially people in the research community who have been delving into this stuff, have taken the stance that Kennedy was turned around. So it was after that moment that he really started changing the way that we do foreign policy. But the truth is, I wouldn't say the truth, but like I've been persuaded to my satisfaction that Kennedy was actually pretty good on this stuff all the way into like from the 50s. So he was taking stands against, like on the Senate floor when he was a senator, he was taking stands against involvement in foreign countries in a variety of ways. He was a huge fan of sovereignty, national sovereignty, and he really just didn't like the way, at least if you look at his speeches now, when he took office, a lot of that stuff was thrown in his lap. So, for instance, what's the pay? What's that?
What?
The what?
The plan that they had. Now I can't even think. The plan that they had to invade Cuba.
Bay of
Bay of
Pigs.
Pigs?
Bay of Pigs. There we go.
Yeah.
So that wasn't actually to invade Cuba. That was to to hook up the Cuban revolutionaries to try and get them in a situation where they could overthrow the Castro government. But the CIA, their plan the whole time was to basically leave those guys hanging to the point where Kennedy needed to send in the American military. And Kennedy was like, no, it's not happening. And he immediately fired everybody after that, right? So
Right.
it's like that was all initiated by Eisenhower and the Dulles regime of the CIA. And Kennedy was kind of saddled with this stuff. I think about him similar to the way I think about Obama, you know. I think Obama was probably genuine.
I agree.
When he started, like that he wanted to get us out of the wars, but you just can't say no to the national security state. There's too many people that have too much money tied up in all this stuff, and it's just, I don't know.
No, I agree with that.
So you've said that you've like taken a lot of time to look over all the JFK stuff, and like that's one of your passions. What is your theory?
So yeah. Here's what I know, right? I know that the CIA knew who Oswald was. I know that he, during the Mexico City incident, a month before the assassination, or 2 months before the assassination, that the CIA had the operational chief in Mexico City had tabs on him. I know that he was impersonated. I know that one of the agents that worked directly under James Jesus Angleton told Jefferson Morley and John Newman in the 1990s that the CIA had an operational interest in Oswald. So what does that mean? That means that a CIA agent is on the record saying that the evidence is clear. The CIA was treating Oswald like an asset. So now he could be a witting asset or an unwitting asset.
Yes.
There's no evidence for either. What a lot of the researchers are saying now is that he was likely a witting asset, and they had provided evidence to support that. So I guess what I'm saying is I believe that the people that were running Oswald, or people who knew that the CIA was running Oswald, would have been in a position to exploit that. And I think that Kennedy had a lot of enemies among those who would have known about Oswald. For instance, William Harvey, David Morales, David Atlee Phillips. And, for instance, William Harvey ran the ZR rifle program, the CIA assassination program.
The what program?
The ZR rifle.
Z, like Zulu, Romeo?
Yeah, Zulu Romeo rifle.
Okay.
That was the CIA's assassination program. They ran assassinations against or plots against Castro, Lumumba, Trujillo. I can go on. I can go on and on.
Yeah.
But anyway, those were the people. For instance, William Harvey got fired by Kennedy, sent to Italy to live out the remainder of his tenure after the Bay of Pigs. All these guys are really mad about it. A lot of these guys are on the record, or at least not on the record, but have been quoted by people who would be in a position to know, saying things like, but we got his ass, or stuff like that. So I think it was probably some combination of David Atlee Phillips, William Harvey, David Morales. What's his name? The guy from Salon, the founder of Salon, wrote a book called Brothers, and then he wrote a book called The Devil's Chessboard, and he puts the finger to Alan Dulles, who was also fired by JFK after the Bay of Pigs. I'm not necessarily convinced of that. He was definitely a bad guy, and I wouldn't put it past him. But a lot of it, so for instance, the cover-up, a lot of these things happen, and people kind of know it happened. They know what happened. They're not directly involved, and they just kind of it's just kind of business as usual to take part in the cover up. So, so yeah, I don't think that it was a massive CIA conspiracy. I think there was a few people who would have been in a position to know, and I think that those people like William Harvey, who were running the anti-Castro Cubans, who Oswald tangled with in like July of that year, or something. He was running the DRE, right, which is the anti-Castro student group. All of that came to light in the Garrison investigation in the 60s. Like, that was what the movie JFK was based on.
Yeah, Oliver Stone. Back into the left. Back into the left. I've seen it.
So, I mean, the finger keeps on being pointed to those guys. I think people who say that Johnson did it are kooks. I think...
I've got like 9 friends that probably just stopped watching us after that one.
I hate. So you said conspiracy. I hate conspiracy theories.
Yeah,
man.
Right.
I hate them, man.
Yeah.
Especially the truthers, man. The 9/11 truthers.
I used to be a huge truther back in the day, and then when I became a lot more entrenched in libertarian ideas, and started reading a lot more into the philosophy itself, and then when I started realizing that the government can't do things as well as the market in a lot of ways. Like they can't, the whole like they can't build a marketplace website without it crashing and all that. If they're not able to do that, I don't know how they'd be able to do something like 9/11 and keep quiet.
What I always like, because people still to this day talk about how Bush did 9/11, and I'm like, okay, the guy that you make fun of for not being able to put on a poncho at the presidential inauguration was able to put together the greatest secret in American history and have everybody keep it? Not the same guy.
And it's not giving credit to there's a... I'm not going to say everyone. Look, I'm also not the kind of libertarian that thinks the government is naturally an evil thing. Like, yeah, I hate the government, but I don't think the government is the epitome of evil and everybody in the government is evil. I don't believe that. That's absolute bullshit. But there are bad guys, in the government.
But like we said before...
But I don't think every single one of them...
No.
How did they find out who was going to be the bad, unpatriotic Americans that were going to be okay with killing this many Americans? I don't fucking believe it.
No.
Like most Americans, whether you're born here or not, like love this country and love the people. So like, I don't know how find me an American that works for the government and loves this country that's going to be, on the number that would take 9/11 to take place, that would be willing to watch this thing happen and not raise a finger against it.
And say this is going to end up saving more lives than we're going to kill
exactly
in one day.
Yeah.
Well, so for me, a conspiracy theory... All right, so here's what a conspiracy theorist is, right? A conspiracy theorist is someone who looks at circumstantial evidence and then designs a theory in his head about how this evidence supports probably a pre-held conclusion.
Yes.
Which in the case of Bush did 9/11. So then they look for they cherry pick a bunch of evidence to support that, and then they come up with these elaborate ways to fit all the evidence together.
Yeah.
So for me, what I do, right, is I look at the evidence that I see, right? So, for instance, you asked me, like, what's my theory? Here's what I could tell you. Like, here are the facts that I can tell you, The thing with 9/11 is there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about. There is a lot of things that went really, really bad. So, for instance, the NSA's surveillance, the CIA's surveillance, the FBI. The FBI are probably the most culpable out of everyone. But it was a bunch of people dropping the ball, I mean, there was a double agent. What's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. But there was a double agent working for the FBI. He was giving lectures to military personnel in Virginia at the same time as he was going. He would do that on Thursday and then go up to New York for the weekend and plan a bunch of terror attacks. As an informant for the FBI, and he was stringing them around like they were a dog on a leash.
Right.
So they don't want to let any of this stuff get out. And there's a lot of stuff like that. Now, the whole 28 pages thing, there was some damning evidence in there, right? So there was Bandar Bush. He was basically sending checks to the handler of two of the hijackers. Now, Bandar Bush, I don't know if you know who Bandar Bush is, but he's the guy that was on the deck of the White House smoking cigars with Bush. Right? So Bandar Bush, he's called Bandar Bush because he was close friends with the Bush family. That was 3 days after the attacks.
Is this guy American or something?
No. He's a Saudi royal family.
Well, I mean, that could be circumstantial as well because, I mean,
Totally.
we're supporting Saudis because we hate Iran, you know?
Right.
Totally, absolutely. I don't think that George Bush did it, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about. But the problem with the truthers is they come up with all this shit about holograms and you know, like and thermo whatever that stuff is that supposedly brought the towers down and the thing is, like, there's a lot of things that I wish we could know about 9/11 that we'll never know because no one takes the conversation seriously because of these goddamn assholes who
Yes. Yeah.
you know, so I don't know, man.
Yeah. Honestly, man, like, truthers, and I used to be one, truthers annoy the crap out of me.
I was living up in like Northern Virginia when 9/11 happened, and I'm not going to date myself that much, but like I knew people whose dads worked at the Pentagon, and I had a friend who was in D.C. that day. He was driving a cab, like he picked somebody up and he drove him up to D.C. and he turned around and was coming back, and he saw the plane, he saw it hit. And he was like, I saw him later that night, and he called me, and he was just like, let's get together. And I got together with him. He was like, I was on the bridge. I saw it coming down. It was, like, I was like, and people were like, oh, it wasn't really a plane. I was like, sorry, Mom, if you're actually watching, it was a motherfucking plane, people.
Oh.
Right. Well, the thing is, like, there's been real hardcore investigative journalism that have uncovered the whole story about who Al Qaeda was, who the bad guys were, what their motivations were, where they were in the 90s, all the way up through the 2000s, all of Osama bin Laden's terror plots from the first World Trade Center bombing. You know, that was basically so. Ramzi Youssef, the guy who did the first World Trade Center bombing, his uncle was one of the lead, planners of the 9/11 bombing.
Oh, they did it.
The Bojinka plot, the Khobar Towers. You know, so like. You're going to tell me that all these hardcore investigative journalists who've been doing this work, looking at evidence and documents over the course of the last, 20 years or whatever, that all of this is just some elaborate conspiracy? That fucking George Bush is smart enough to plant documents from 20 years ago about Mohammed Atta being pissed about the shit that went down in Lebanon? Like, come on, man. Just read a book. Read a goddamn book. You know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
No, man. It does give me just as well.
I've worked with, I worked in the service industry for a really long time, and a lot of people in the service industry, they just go through phases of different things. And I worked at a restaurant in Nashville for a while, and there was a group of them that all became truthers 10 years after the fact, and they're all, you need to watch this video on YouTube. And I was like, no.
Yeah, right.
No.
Right. And, so...
I know you were like 11 when that happened, but I wasn't. And trust me, that video is wrong.
Right. A 5-minute YouTube clip is not going to provide you with enough answers for you to have a sophisticated opinion on any topic.
No.
Well, and sometimes it goes beyond the whole circumstantial evidence thing, because I'm not a fan of, we went to war with Iraq so we can have their oil. I am not a fan of that argument, because I've been there and I never protected any oil fields. I don't know a single soldier that's protected any oil fields, and I don't remember any equipment there to pull out oil from oil fields. And that's a huge, like, people don't realize the scale it takes to run oil extraction and transportation. And I'm just like, I am not a fan of that theory at all either, because I'm like, then why the fuck is it so expensive? You know, it's
So
this stuff is beyond what the government's able to do. Gas goes up, gas goes down. Other than taxation and foreign policy is the cause of governments talking about stuff. But other than that, like, no, we did not go to war for oil either, in my opinion.
Well, it's not just your. I mean, so there's evidence again. Like there's people who talked about it, and there's reasons that they gave. If you read Bob Woodward, or if you read, who was really good on the Iraq War. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Karen Kostrowski, I think, who was there at the Pentagon at the time.
Yeah.
Who's like recently become an anarcho-capitalist, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But like, these people like were there, and they'll tell you why, and they'll tell you what our motivations were.
Yeah.
And they suck. They're all like really bad motivations.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have gone to war because of them. But it's not because of oil, and it's not because of the petrodollar. Petrodollar, that's another pet conspiracy
Yes.
of mine that I love to debunk. I actually wrote a long-form article for the Ron Paul Institute of Peace and Prosperity to just like 50 years of economic history of why your fucking stupid petrodollar conspiracy is bullshit.
Yes. Yeah, dude. I hear it often. Like, look, I don't trust anybody. So I don't trust banks as much as I don't trust anybody that I don't know. But like this whole, the Rockefellers and every other banking name that I can't remember because I'm not into this stuff anymore. Like they're the ones doing all this because Libya, Syria, and Yemen are the last, and North Korea are the last 4 countries in the world that don't have a central. What? Like, no, dude, I'm so sorry. No, like I don't believe it. I want proof.
The Rothschilds.
Yeah, either proof or no proof. Like Rothschilds were good at banking. Okay, boom.
So that's the thing, man. If you look at the origins of this history, it's actually like pretty clear. And when I say the history, I don't mean the history of the Rothschilds.
Yes.
I mean the history of blaming the Rothschilds. You know what I'm saying? So that
they're Jewish, right?
Yeah, they're Jewish.
Okay, so that kind of
that's a huge part of it, man. Is
Yeah.
that it's a lot of this stuff is no shit, real anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And believe me, we're all libertarians. We're all like confronted with SJW nonsense on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But there are no shit like anti-Semites that came up with these philosophies. So
I believe you.
Interestingly enough, the first record that we have of the international banking conspiracy was started by
National Socialists or something?
Pierre Proudhon,
Okay.
who was known as the first anarchist philosopher. His beef, the reason that he started the conspiracy was because of his beef with finance capitalism, right?
Yeah.
So, and then if you look at throughout the late 1800s and then the early 1900s, all these guys are a bunch of freaking anti-Semites. And if you look at Eustace Mullins or anyone who's like a known name on how the Federal Reserve started or whatever, they all did it because they were a bunch of freaking Hitler-loving Nazis.
Yeah.
Like no,
I believe it. Yeah.
and yeah, man. So it's like it's interesting to me, but it's really upsetting and disheartening
I agree.
because it takes your eye off the ball.
Mm-hmm.
And there's important work that needs to be done, important discussions that need to be had
Yeah.
about the Federal Reserve and about that, and about the control of banks. Like, yeah, banks are still evil,
Yes.
but they're not like.
People don't get that. People don't get that. It's like you said, circumstantial evidence. So banks are doing bad things by using the government, which everybody would do anyways, individual or corporation. But just because that is happening does not mean it's a conspiracy of any kind. And like you said, eyes off the ball. All these people wanting to focus on building 7, holograms, like you were just saying, all that stuff. And I'm just like, okay. And I think I said this on the show before when we talked about it. I'm like, okay, once you prove it, now what? Like, now what? Nothing. Like, you got nothing. So how about we just now move towards, more liberty and freedom and limiting the government, which should have been what you've been doing from the first place, rather than trying to prove something that basically we would already know if that was the case. Because otherwise, you're going to prove it, and then either the Men in Black helicopters are going to come and take you away, or you're going to prove it and everyone's going to laugh at you. And so it's pointless to focus on the bullshit conspiracy theories, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard me, but yeah.
that's like, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it on that one.
We're coming to an end here. So let's talk about us sitting down in the Auburn University dorm room in a circle.
Oh, man. So, all right. So, listen. So, Muhammad, I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, like, we connected pretty quick. Just because we're, both military, kind of, we at that point, I don't know about you, but I had just done my time, so I was basically, it was still a part of my identity.
When'd you get out?
I got out January of 2016.
Yeah, see, no, I was March 2012.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah. So,
but it's still part of my identity.
So,
I mean, look at my hat.
yeah, man. So but it was me, Hamid, and then there's two other guys.
Michael.
Mike Capone.
Yeah.
And Chris Calton. Chris is actually doing a monster podcast for Mises Institute right now.
Nice.
What's it called?
I didn't know about this.
It's a history podcast.
Nice.
People should definitely check it out.
Mm-hmm.
He spent the first like number of episodes talking about the war on drugs from a historian's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Really,
Nice.
really, really solid stuff. But so it was me, Chris, and Muhammad and Michael, and we all hung out together basically the entire time, and we became close friends. I felt that we left close friends.
Yes.
But so we're all so it's like we're getting ready to leave, and I'm a heavy drinker. I go out and I party a lot, but the rest of the guys kind of not so much. So we end up going back to the hotel, and we're all just kind of hanging around. It's 2:00 in the morning, and we're sitting in a circle in the lobby of the hotel, and we're talking about just the dumbest shit, like shit that you would only fucking find yourself talking about at 2:00 in the morning in a lobby of the hotel. So it's like me and Chris are arguing about left anarchism or something, and then Muhammad is like, "What do you think the worst, like the scariest way to die is?" It's like
What's funny is I've never been drunk with Muhammad at 2 a.m., but that sounds like a question he would ask sober. So I could see him asking it drunk.
And so he's like, and we're looking at him like, what are you even talking about, man? And he's like, no, man, I just mean like the scariest way to die. I'm thinking a spear. And they're like, a fucking spear? What? And we start rattling off ways that you could die. That'd be more, that'd be scary, like drowning or like being tortured to death or being in a fire or having chemicals dumped all over. And he's like, no, I mean in like battle. Like, that would be some scary shit, man.
I insisted on the spearman the whole time.
Like, there'd be some scary shit. And fucking Chris called, goes, he's like, no, you guys, listen to this, right? Have you ever heard of Vlad the Impaler? And we're like, so I mean, maybe some people knew, but I didn't. So I was like, no, who's that? He's like, man, this guy, he's like what they based Dracula off.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what he would do, and Chris just starts rattling off what this motherfucker would do to you. And let me tell you, you want to like forget anything that we had mentioned. Like, this guy would strip you naked, he'd open, he'd let you, he'd leave you hanging for days and days and days. Animals were involved, all kinds of shit. He would take you, and he would basically take a big post, right? Big sharp post.
Yeah, big steak, and he put you on it.
And he'd fucking put you down onto it, right?
Mm.
It's like anus first, right? All
the way up.
And we're all just like kind of looking there, and mortified. Everyone in the room is fucking mortified. Silent, right? And then Muhammad goes, so you're telling me there's a spear?
That was when That night you had to introduce me to HEMA because I was interested in I forget what it's called. Is it Aikido? Is that the Japanese martial arts? Or
There's a couple. Japanese sword arts.
Yes.
Kind of encompasses.
Yeah, I was super interested in that, and then you told me about HEMA. And I was always a fan of like military history and just history in general. Played a lot of video games, and I'm just like, man, spears were really fucking long. This was my reasoning. Spears were really long, and you can't reach the motherfucker that's stabbing you.
I've heard Muhammad's reasoning. It is not adequate.
I've heard Muhammad's reasoning on a lot of things, and most of them are not adequate.
I just think it's scary not being able to reach the guy and fight back, and you're being stabbed in the gut with this thing. So yeah, that's a spear story.
You guys talked about this pre-show, and I was really excited, and then I was really hoping somebody threw a spear at somebody. I had no idea what was going on. I was like, I hope spears are actually involved.
Yep.
Yeah. No, man. Just Muhammad being Muhammad, man.
Yeah.
I am going to get involved back again with HEMA soonish. I like the place that I went to. Those guys are really nice. I learned all the cuts. I learned some guards.
Speaking of
Shit's
Muhammad
badass.
being Muhammad, we actually discussed this yesterday, but we're planning on waterboarding him live on an episode, just so we know.
Shit.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm not going to be the only one. Just so
Yeah,
you know.
no, there's gonna
It's not meant to be racist.
we're both gonna get waterboarded, but it's gonna be a lot funnier when he gets waterboarded. But yeah, so we're planning on actually waterboarding each other during an episode, just so we can be like, how bad is this?
I mean, it's mental shit,
Yeah.
man. I'm a paratrooper. I can handle it.
That'd probably be like good for your ratings.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I
Really?
mean,
Because I thought it was the other way around.
no, I think people will watch.
A bunch of people are going to turn you guys off, but a lot more are going to turn you on.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just like, this seems a little desperate. But if they want to do it, they want to do it. So I'm not against it. It can't be that bad. So we'll see. Us actually doing it, not the.
It can't be that bad.
Anyways.
I talked to 3 people yesterday who have been waterboarded, and they've all went, "Yeah, you do that to me for 2 minutes, and I'll tell you whatever you want." Really? Is it that bad though? Yeah, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm like, oh, I gotta try this.
God damn. I'm kind of scared.
Yeah, I'm actually like at first I was like, this can't be that bad, and then they started telling me about it, and I was like, okay, now I'm actually nervous about this. Like, but I've committed, and now I've said it on the show, so we have to do it.
But yeah, so it's probably time we end this thing so he can go and do his stuff.
Yes. Do you have anything you need to?
Yes.
You would like to plug or promote or tell people
No,
to
man.
read?
Just everyone get on the phone, call your congressman, tell them that we need to end this bullshit in Yemen.
Walter Jones bill.
The Walter Jones bill.
Walter Jones bill, House Concurrent Resolution 81, invoke the War Powers Act to end the unconstitutional war in Yemen.
Okay.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much to us for having you on.
Yeah.
That's
it
what was
fun.
about to come out of my mouth. Thank you so much for coming on. We definitely appreciated it. It was definitely informative. I was taking notes the entire time of people to look up and research.
Yeah, sorry, you get me talking, man.
Dude, like,
It's your show.
yeah, we brought a guest on because neither one of us felt like talking. I'm really interested in the JFK stuff. I am. I just don't ever sit down because it's so much information, and you can only watch the Oliver Stone movie so many times.
All right. Well, so let me tell you who to look at for JFK. All right, it's going to be the best names are going to be Bill Simpich, John Newman, Bill Simpich, John Newman. Who else?
I got William Harvey.
No. So these are authors. I'm giving you
Oh,
authors. right
gotcha.
now. Or like you can check out their
What about
lectures on YouTube.
David Atlee Phillips.
Yeah, all those are like CIA guys. Those are the bad guys. Those are the guys who fucking did it.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So Bill Simpich, John Newman, are probably the number 1 and 2 guys that I like on the case. And then James DiEugenio is really good on foreign policy, and Jim Douglas. Check those names out.
I'm going to totally make up how to spell that last name, but I'll figure it out. And...
It's saved. It's recorded.
Okay. Posterity.
Posterity for prostates.
For prostates. For prostates. Hey, don't forget that Movember starts in 3 days for prostate cancer.
Mm-hmm.
So I won't be growing a mustache because this is the best I got. But for those of you who can't see his mustache, which is everybody but us, it's fantastic. It's a great mustache.
Mm-hmm. Hey, man, him and Tucker have really good mustaches.
Yeah. Did I see that you're a flautist or something?
Yeah, we call them fluter. So I play traditional Irish music. I play a lot of music around here in Chicago and Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we don't call them flautists because that's kind of I don't have a word to use that won't get me in trouble with.
Less manly.
Yep.
That's a way you can put it. Yeah, that's probably a safer.
Right. That's
probably
right. I know where you were thinking, but no, we're not going to say that.
I've got some heavy metal to send you later. That's heavy metal with flutes. Just saying.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
So I play traditional Irish music. It's kind of pays the bills.
Nice.
That and teaching fencing. So
yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. I give people mud water. So I mean, so you know,
whenever you're down here, you'll have some.
Yeah. I dig your guys' podcast. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely.
I hope you had fun.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you having on, and we appreciate you liking us enough to come on. So yeah, thank you so much. Do you want to plug everything?
No.
No? Okay. Well, remember,
go ahead and hang out with us while we do, this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please do not forget, everybody, that on December 2nd. Yes. On December 2nd, we are going to be having our 1-year anniversary show at Grassroots Kava House in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. We're going to be having a live studio audience. We've got special guests coming in. We've got a bunch of special stuff happening. According to Muhammad today, it's our last show. So,
it is? Oh, yes.
Yeah. He posted that on my wall. But come on down. It's not really our last show. We don't think. But come on down to Grassroots Kava House on December 2nd. Check us out. Get a chance to meet us in real life. Also, you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Muddied Waters of Freedom, or on Instagram at Muddied Waters of Freedom, or on Twitter at Muddied_water. This and every other episode we've ever done, you can find the audio at muddiedwatersoffreedom.com. And we forgot to thank Low Tide Kava Bar for the kava and kratom we drank during our show.
No.
So, what?
I was going to say no kava for me today.
Yeah, no kava for Muhammad today. So I'm the Muddied Waters of Freedom, and he is the kratom
person.
Waters of Freedom. All right.
Bula. All right, thank you for joining us, everybody.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And again, Mr. Reilly, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yep.
We do appreciate it.
Remember, guys, as always, where we're going,
we don't need roads.